For our next speaker, another fantastic company, it's a slight change of pace as we move to the fast-growing companies within e-commerce and payments, actually, for the next hour. Up first, we have an international fashion e-commerce company based in Bangkok, and describing how they're targeting today's global consumer. Welcome to stage, please, Pomelo Fashion CEO, David Ju. David? Big welcome.
Hi, great to be at Rise. So I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Pomelo. And just want to share with you guys a few of the trends and themes that we think are important in the broader digital retail space. And specifically, how we at Pomelo are really hoping to lead on some of those trends. So what are we trying to do at Pomelo? Our goal is to build Asia's first global fast fashion brand for a digital world. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know this already, but the majority of fast fashion is bought and produced in Asia. But the industry is controlled by a few select players based in Europe and the States, right? And as we know, in order to be relevant, in order to lead, you have to be where your customers are. So when we think about the types of companies that are going to be disrupting the fast fashion industry, which is one of the world's biggest industries, it's going to be a company out of Asia that's digital in its DNA and that is vertically integrated, right? Those are the keys to being successful and placing yourself at the point of disruption. So a little bit about Pomelo. We're a leading online fast fashion brand. We're headquartered in Bangkok. We also have offices in Guangzhou, in Jakarta, as well as some staff in Singapore. Over 250 people. Our investors include JD.com, ZozoTown, one of the biggest e-commerce companies in Japan, Central Group, in addition to blue chip venture capital investors. And we also actually have a very big global customer base. So I think with the advent of cross-border commerce, we're finding more and more that the boundaries of brands no longer exist around traditional geographic or country-specific restrictions, right? Like you can access Pomelo's Instagram whether you're in New York City, Los Angeles, Mumbai, Beijing, Seoul, or Bangkok, right? And we're seeing more and more of that. So I'll jump into a few things that I think are really important. So the first trend that I'm sure a lot of you guys have been following and maybe even experiencing is this trend of the DNVB, the digitally native vertical brand, right? And I'll give you a few examples. So you have Warby Parker, that's completely disrupting the age-old, crusty eyewear category, right? So they're going after what is really a monopoly, at best a duopoly. They're bringing great product to their customers at honest prices, really focusing on customer experience, and creating a very valuable business in the process with a huge brand following. You also have Everlane doing the same thing in the luxury basic space. So think of Banana Republic, J. Crew, right? Tommy Hilfiger. These are the types of businesses that they are disrupting, right? They're bringing transparency back into the production process. The brand stands for something. And customers today, they want to know what's the story behind the brand? What do you stand for? Who's making these products? How are they being made? And that's what's really happening across the board, whether it's in Southeast Asia, in China, in North Asia, and America. And that's a trend that cannot be ignored, right? A brand, you can't just advertise with celebrities or in fancy newspapers. That doesn't work anymore, right? People are looking beyond that, and they want to know the story behind your brand. Another great example is Glossier in the US. So again, they're going after a an industry that hasn't changed in decades, right? There's it's probably like a $50 billion profit pool that they're going after using this DNVB model, right? So when you're a DNVB, you want to go after industries that have not changed in a long time, brands that are old, brands that don't resonate anymore with emerging consumers, and you want to go in there fresh with a clear value proposition, and that's going to differentiate you very, very clearly from all of these traditional brands, right? The last is Pomelo, and what we're doing is we're going after Zara and H&M, right? So we're going after the fast fashion industry. We see a lot of the same trends. There's not very much innovation. Customer experience is something that maybe they're not as focused on. And digital is something that's not in their DNA. So what do? We focus on product, we focus on customer experience, and we focus on digital, right? And that's how we've been able to compete with some of these really big giants. The second trend that I really want to talk about is this blurring of the lines between offline, online, e-commerce, and traditional retail. So as a digitally native vertical brand, what we're seeing is that the traditional paradigm of e-commerce versus retail, offline retail, is not really the right way to think about your business if you're a brand, right? If you really put customer first, the customer experience first, and you want to create a relevant experience for your customer, creating a paradigm that differentiates between online and offline transactions makes no sense, right? As a customer, as somebody who's buying things, I'm seamlessly transitioning from mobile to desktop, from desktop to shopping mall, from shopping mall to magazine, right? And if you want to be relevant, if you want to have a voice, you got to make sure that you're creating an experience that puts the customer first, right? So I really think it's important that you forget about channels and try to build a unique funnel that incorporates both the offline and the online experience in a seamless way. And I'll give you a couple of data points around what I'm talking about. When you're able to blend the two together, a few things will happen, right? Typically, you will see lower customer acquisition cost. You're going to see much higher buyer frequency. So your repeat purchase rate is going to go up. And ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to diversify away from traditional digital marketing channels as you expand, right? So whether it's Warby Parker or Glossier or Everlane, they're having huge success with their offline locations, right? I'm not going to call them stores because they have different elements to them, but they are having huge success. And if you talk to mall operators or retail owners, right, they are hungry to get these new types of business models into traditional retail spaces. It's the one category of of offline retail that's growing, and it's growing significantly. So last year alone, Tencent, Alibaba, JD, they spent over $20 billion in physical retail assets. Amazon obviously purchased Whole Foods. And these are just some. Walmart is a big buyer of DNVB brands. So they're all recognizing that the future is not online or offline. It's somewhere in between. And you have to be able to create something that resonates and that follows the customer experience along the way. So the next trend I want to talk about is sustainability. And a lot of people say, they're like, David, is that really a relevant topic in the emerging markets? Do people really care about sustainability, right? And if you look at some reports, you see, okay, the level of awareness around topics of sustainability is still early stage, right? So maybe 15 to 20% of any given segment believes that this is an important topic. But you got to ask yourself, right? We're always trying to be at the leading edge of technology, of retail trends. You also have to be at the forefront of social matters. That's the right place to be at if you're an innovative company. Innovation doesn't stop just, at technology. It has to go beyond that. And that's what we're doing through our Purpose Collection. So we have three things. We use eco-friendly fabrics. We also focus on employing community-focused production. And the third component is really around what we define as the transaction. The transaction is not just the purchasing of the item, right? We're widening the definition of what it means to transact with Pomelo. So it's a transaction that we have with our suppliers, transaction that we have with our producers, as well as what happens to the product at the end of the life cycle. So all of our Purpose Collection products have QR codes, and they are linked up to the app. So if you scan the QR code, you can schedule for somebody to come and pick up any type of clothing that you want to donate or recycle. So just as easy it is to make a purchase, it is to make sure that your clothing is going to either somebody in need or being recycled properly so that it can be reused, right? In closing, I just want to kind of go back to the 3 trends that I discussed. First is DNVB, right? Brands that are built first and foremost on customer experience that are disrupting decades-old industries, right? The second is really about omni-channel. Forget offline, online. It's all about how do you find an experience that's relevant across the entirety of human experience, right? That's what's important. And the last is really staying ahead and innovating, not just on the technology forefront, but in terms of impact. This is extremely important, and more, your customers, your users are going to ask, what are you doing to make the world a better place? And you better have a good answer. So that's it. Thank you.